The NHL will hate what the Leafs are about to do, is following their second preseason game where we saw flashes of greatness from one player in particular. Things have just taken a very encouraging turn. We're going to break that down, but also discuss some other interesting things from this game, as well as a bunch of other Leafs updates. So, folks, despite the heartbreaking loss, I guess, in yesterday's game, there was a ton of encouraging things, and one player really stood out. We're going to break all of that down in this episode, as well as a few injury updates before we get into it all. If you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. About 70% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. You guys are absolute beasts of the support. There's a lot to go over today. Yesterday night's game was a second preseason game, and of course, we're going to be breaking down the storylines from it, but it was a rough loss. But I'm going to take out the fact that they lost this game and kind of dive into some of the positives, because there were a ton of them. And we'll dive into Matthews, we'll dive into Maccelli. We're going to be focusing on one player, but let's start with how the game went in case you missed it. But again, we're going to be covering a very interesting storyline and some new comments from Berube, from Matthew Nye, surprisingly, and a ton of different things here. But Darius, going to get your quick thoughts on the game before we dive into the juicy stuff here. Austin Matthews from Matias Maccelli. A fantastic start, the best possible start they could have had there, and making some people think here. A lot of, very good plays were made yesterday. It's obviously going to be overshadowed by the bad finish, but we saw a first kind of, taste of Matias Maccelli. Looked very, very good. Fed Austin Matthews, who, guess what, folks, looks absolutely electric and fully healthy. So many encouraging signs here. And boy, oh boy, what goal that could have been off a fantastic pass. But Maccelli, Matthews, Nyes, everyone looked great. And of course, having Maccelli out there in a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, he's prone for breakout here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was nice to see, some hockey on Scotiabank Arena ice again after what seemed like a long off season. It really did. And obviously, a couple of guys looked really, really good. That entire first line looked awesome. Austin Matthews, a lot of people were saying, why didn't you back check on the last goal or whatever? It's preseason. It's fine. He looked good in other ways, and he does look like he's healthy. Matthew Nyes, a little bit scary there in the middle of the game. He did miss some time. I think it was concussion protocol. He seems like it's going to be fine. And again, it's preseason. These teams take precautions and stuff like that. Maccelli, don't hate him on the top line. I do wonder if that becomes a storyline now. He looks really good. Some of the passes he was dishing out, we saw some highlights in the summer. I'm telling you, this guy is going to put up some serious points with the team. I said it when they first acquired him. He looks really good. Is he going to stick on the first line? I don't know. I think that he's going to be in the top six, that's for sure. But man, he looked good with Matthews. There was some synergy going on there. So that'll be interesting to look at. And he makes almost $10 million less than the other guys. So that is a good sign as well as we head into the regular season. But again, a lot of encouraging signs. I'm not even mad about the loss. Nobody, remembers preseason scores or anything like that. So that's fine. As we move forward, you want to see what certain guys are doing in certain roles that they're put in. So I think that's the biggest storyline that everyone's taking out of some of these games at this point as we, move closer to the regular season, because the preseason is shortened now. How do they shorten the bench even more? Who's getting cut next? And who's going to stick around for the long haul? Because, another guy we're going to get to, Easton Cowan, I think is an interesting storyline as well.
Yeah, like I said yesterday or a couple days ago in their win, result doesn't matter. It's kind of what happens within the game. Same thing today. Result doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they win or lose in the preseason. It's what happens there. Matthew Nyes, again, he's good to go. He was back on the bench and skated and played and finished the game. Dennis Hildeby looked really, really good in 2 periods, 23 for 23. So this is encouraging, especially given the uncertainty surrounding Joseph Woll, and hopefully everything's good with him, like we covered in yesterday's video. But he may have stolen, and we saw him as the one of the options last year. Played a couple games, looked completely overmatched, which maybe that gave him some experience now heading into this game yesterday. Now I want to clarify: Ottawa Senators, they're throwing out their B team in there, similar to what the Leafs kind of did in the first preseason game. So I'm not going to take too much into account for this, but a very good game from him. But Darius, it's time to address. Obviously, shout out to Maccelli, the elephant in the room, I guess. And that is Easton Cowan. What a game from the young stud. And obviously in yesterday's video, we covered how Craig Berube, was he spoke very highly and was very encouraged by his first game, and he didn't even have a point there. Yesterday looked even better. Bobby gets the goal, and Easton Cowan is rewarded with the primary. Genuinely surprised how mature Cowan looks at an NHL level. He's not overthinking a thing out there. Darius, he looked electric. Whether you look at, him being physical again, it was a fantastic, fantastic game for him from top to bottom. He didn't score a goal, but was obviously the primary assister there. He looks really, really good and completely different than last training camp and last preseason, because he actually looks like he belongs with the team like he did a couple of years ago. But now, 2 years older, 2 years more mature, he's going to be fighting for a spot. And I really hope it continues, because that would make for some very interesting discourse here to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny enough, if he was still eligible to go back to the OHL, or if that was still the rule, right, that would affect him, which it doesn't anymore. He can go straight to the Marlies. I do think that he would make the Leafs, decision making very difficult. He looks really good, and he's dragging guys into the fight. He is, physicality, right, that you highlighted as well. Like, he is not shying away from that stuff. He clearly has had a conversation with management and the coaching staff before the preseason began in terms of, this is what we want from you. And I think he's actually executing on what that is. So that's interesting, because a lot of people I see out there on Twitter, or, if you just talk to your friends right now, everyone's like, Easton Cowan is not Austin Matthews. Why is that? Right. And I don't think that's the goal here. I think that he is to play a specific role if he's going to make this team. And I think he's doing it. I think that he had, there was a conversation there. We need, X, Y, and Z out of you. And I think he's delivering on what they've asked so far. So I think he's going to continue to get a look here. I think they're going to keep putting him in games. Is he going to make the team? I'm not 100% sure yet, because it's going to be easy for them if they want to just send him to the Marlies, and then maybe we'll see him back up if there is an injury or anything like that, because they do have a lot of bodies right now. We've covered it through the whole summer, but man, he does look good. He looks calm, poised. He's not panicking, anything like that. So all good signs for Easton Cowan. He looks pretty mature out there, which is great. And again, the physicality and that stuff, and like going to the net, going at guys after the whistle, all of that stuff, like that's what Florida does, right? The Florida Panthers, these teams that we see, steamroll other teams. That's what they do. So he has that mentality. He has, in junior before with London. So it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing with him. But man, through 2 games so far, he looks really good.
Yeah, you even have Matthew Nyes coming out and saying Easton Cowan has been growing both as a player and outside of the ice and on ice as a person. He's grown as a player and a person. He's gotten a lot better. He's gotten a lot faster, and that's fun to see. He's more comfortable with the guys. Definitely talks a little more, and that's a good thing, folks. He is experiencing the growth that we all hoped, and I'm super excited to see how he's going to do. But you mentioned it, Michael Pezzetta, Calle Yarncroke, David Kampf, they're all in his way as it pertains to guys that are actual NHLers. Not saying Cowan is worse than any of those guys, but he obviously is doing what they're telling him to do. And I think that's the way he makes the team. I think the Leafs are telling him, do this, you have a chance to make the team. He's doing it. He's playing well. It's finally starting to show up on the score sheet. And it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens with Easton Cowan, because I like the way this team looks, Darius. Obviously, this was the first time seeing Matthews skate at the end of the warm-up without, Mitch Marner around, and that was obviously sad for some people. I'm not worried about it. Completely flipped here. The vibes seem better. Everything seems good. The one thing I will throw out there, which is a negative, because I don't want to be all positive in this video because they did lose a game. Scott Lawton looks pretty rough. He looks pretty rough out there, and I don't want to put this into the universe, but if he's not better than like David Kampf and Calle Yarncroke, they'll probably start with Lawton, but like that could become an interesting question. I don't think it's going to get to that point, but man, oh man, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. There's a lot of people talking about it. He did not look very good, and it's a little bit concerning because this is now months of his bad play, and they didn't pay a cheap price for him. However, I do think he'll figure it out, and he's a useful player, but a little bit rough.
I ultimately think he'll figure it out, but I think that's a big storyline heading into this year, because yes, they gave up quite a bit for him, and I think that it was fine because, on the Flyers, he's probably a second line center. On the Leafs, he's not that. He's going to fill a different role, but he still has that skill. He's still the same player, but that hasn't come out yet with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I think it's a little concerning. It is time to hit that button at this point, because he doesn't look that great still. He is playing a bit of a different role, so you have to take that into consideration. But if someone else is better, if David Kampf emerges as, okay, he does look better and he can play that role better, they're probably going to hang on to him and he'll probably play that role. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on, because that could turn into a bit of a disaster. Whereas we thought, wow, this is great, and they have so much depth and he can add so much more to the lineup than a David Kampf can, because, Kampf is so one-dimensional just defensively, right? So we'll see how that ends up playing out. Ultimately, I'm going to remain optimistic with Scott Lawton. I think he's going to figure it out, but yeah, it's definitely something we're going to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we've seen some good players this camp so far. Easton Cowan, Ben Danford looking great. Let us know down below your thoughts on your favorite player so far. Easton Cowan is could be a very scary sight for a lot of other NHL teams that had to play against him. And a lot of those, people out there thought that he was going to be not a bust necessarily, but the Leafs picked way too high. Could ultimately choose to be the right move. But that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.